Welcome to Interview with the Masters, brought to you by CGMA, the CG Master Academy. I'm your host, Ben Scott. Our guest today is Karla Ortiz, concept artist at ILM. Karla has also done work for Tor Books, Wizards of the Coast, Kabam, and NCSoft. Karla has showcased her work at galleries such as Think Space, Spoke Art, and the Nucleus Gallery. Before we begin, a reminder that registration for CGMA courses is currently closed, but will open again April 4th. Visit 2d.cgmasteracademy.com and sign up for the class or classes that best fit your needs. Interview with the Masters is an ongoing series. Keep an eye on our website for more information. For everyone who is joining us today, if you have any questions for Karla, you'll see in your GoToWebinar control panel a small box titled Questions. Kindly send your questions through the control panel, and we will attempt to answer as many questions as possible. Karla, thank you for joining us today.
Hi.
Karla, it would be great to have a brief introduction about who you are and what it is that you do.
All right. Well, first of all, hi everyone. Thanks for coming out. My name is Karla Ortiz. I currently am a concept artist at ILM. On my spare free time, I work as also an illustrator for Tor Books, Magic the Gathering. I also do fine art and showcasing galleries such as Think Space and Gallery Nucleus and Spoke Art and a bunch of other stuff. I paint all the time. I have a cat. Her name's Sadie. And yeah, that's pretty much it. Oh, I was born on Halloween. Isn't that crazy? That's it. I think that's it. Yeah.
Fantastic. Well, we were taking a little bit of time and you were pulling up some images before. It'd be great if we could pull those up now and we can discuss a little bit about your approach.
Yeah, absolutely. So before me, I have just, I organized a bunch of folders and different things. We can start talking about what I do primarily at my job and what I'm mostly known for. Yes, Magic the Gathering is one of them, but specifically character work. Oh, am I showing my screen? Hold on.
Not yet.
Okay, here we go. Am I showing my screen now?
It's going to probably take a second to load, but
Okay.
It should be up now.
Sorry, guys. You tell me. How about now? Can you
Yep,
see me?
Yes, we can. Your work is up now.
Oh, hooray! But yeah, primarily I'm known for my characters. This was work I did about like 2 years or so, maybe 2 years and a half ago, for Kabam. And this is primarily what is also my passion. I love character work. I love the figure. I love painting people. I love the expressions. I love costuming. This one was a little bit more recent. This one done at the Massive Black Workshop last December. That's a bigger version. And this was also done for Kabam. And yeah, like my process is pretty straightforward. I actually have a PSD of this particular image. It was available for download for a while, so maybe some of your listeners have it already and are bored to death with it. But so pretty much in a nutshell, and can you guys see all this? All good?
Yep.
Okay, excellent. So pretty much I start with a background, you know, kind of like, oh, this looks pretty. And then I immediately start blocking in just simple shapes, big, broad things that have an accuracy and angle that are, you know, pretty much what I intend the final thing to do. I block in things like, you know, my, oh shit, sorry. I also curse. Sorry guys, in advance. I like to kind of indicate early on where my eyes are, you know, where I'm headed with things. As I kind of keep going, I keep on adjusting, you know, proportions and things like that. And then once I'm ready with the proportions, I jump into, you know, really start detailing things out.
Mm-hmm.
And let's see what's in this folder. Ooh, look at all that. Hold on, let's go back in time.
Now, do you always tend to start with a large painterly brushstroke work like this, or do you sometimes also start with line art?
It depends on what I'm working on and what its requirements. Sometimes they do want to see just simple line let's say I'm working on something for a modeler. Sometimes they want to see simple line because it's a lot easier to really tell what's going on rather than, deciphering what's happening over here versus what's happening over there, that kind of stuff. But most of the time, I like to start with shape and painterly forms. I have an easier time telling what proportions are things, what's the size of things if it's in shape. I'll have a lot of harder time doing it in line. I know some people do excellent stuff in line early on. I'm not one of them. But yeah, so as you can see, so we jump from this point to here, and all that I'm really doing is just, really going in there and enhancing, what is there. Really just kind of like adding little brush marks and going from what we call from the whole to the part, going from like the whole image, because I already set it up earlier on, to then feeling comfortable with my proportions and starting to, detail things out. And then we just kind of keep going and building from that. And this is pretty much the process for pretty much everything I do. I always start with a base and once I'm happy with it, I go forward, and then we go into design. And it's this stage I'm kind of just exploring around. I'm like, oh, look at that black mark, and it's like, what if it's blue,
Now, one thing I'm noticing as you've built up this image is you have some at least they appear very accurate cast shadows on this image that are building up these forms. Are these shadows that you mentally build as you look at the image, or do you use reference, or how do you build these forms as you're working?
So for this particular image in the workshop, I did have reference available, but after painting so many faces, you kind of start getting a feel for like what is the best, how does lighting react to the form. Like, for example, around the nose, there's always such a nice little cast shadow around this area. I had a teacher also a long time ago tell me that, cast shadow, if there's a cast shadow, put it in there. It helps sell the form. It adds lighting. It adds drama to it. And it's also always an immediate payoff. It's just like, yay, look at it, cast shadow, it's form, it's three-dimensional, it's reacting to light. A good thing to do is just do a lot of studies. In Blix, they sell little statues of bust of heads. I have 3 of them. Or any art store, get a little bust, or even with your kneaded eraser, I used to do this a lot as a student. I used to kind of build and model a little head and then light it in many different directions and see what the cast shadows do. Years and years of study will really help you push that lighting. And I don't know. Cast shadows are awesome. Does that answer your question?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I find that cast shadows tend to be one of the more complex things as students are approaching their work. So I think that's some very good advice.
Here, let's the way I was taught, and I'm going to make a little, and hopefully I don't lag too horribly. And hopefully I remember how to draw. See, that's always the fear when you make anything live. You're just like, oh dear God. So we used to study from cast drawings way back when. In fact, let me bring that up really quick. I have a whole folder here full of student stuff. Let me see if I have. So this was my first cast drawing, the eye, and it's something that's literally just a study of form, light, how things react to light, how shadows are formed, how bounce light works. And here's another one. This is one of my earlier works, and eventually, after doing so many of them, I graduated with this one, which was an oil painting. It's called the Nike of Samoth Rays. And literally, the way that these were done is, and I'll do a little diagram right here. Imagine that this is that beautiful labored lady thingy. Yeah, this is an amazing statue. And the way that we used to study it is that we used to have a singular light source pointing at it. And we knew where it was, and that was the clue that would fill us in to where all the shadows should be. If you know where your lighting is, you can tell where your shadows are. And if you imagine something being a 3D object, it's a lot easier to really kind of think about it. So like, I'm going to move my light. Actually, let's say I don't know, I'm going to move this over here, and let's say I lit it up. I'm like, it's kind of silly. I'm going to move it, let's say a traditional, close to maybe even 45-degree angle type of thing. Let's move it over here. So, when you have your lighting set up, you should know where everything is. You should know where your shadows fall. And you can kind of tell, and everything kind of makes sense. Like, let's say, okay, well, this is a circle, then there's going to be a cast shadow over here. As it gets closer to the fold, or as it gets closer to the object, it's going to get slightly darker. This is pretty much how we used to start those casts. We used to block in our shadows immediately. So it kind of goes over here. So maybe this is kind of a bit on fall off.
So right now you're using a combination of memory and also invention, including the angle of the light.
Yeah, pretty much. Because once you know the angle of the light, it's a lot easier to figure out where your shadows go. Okay, I'm going to erase this stupid face because it just keeps staring at me.
I mean, you're welcome to fully render that face if you would like.
When you say it like that, then it becomes a challenge. Then, all right, fine.
I think it was a failure of the Nike to not have such an exciting face to it.
Listen, I'm a master of faces. And then you kind of start thinking, okay, well, if it's kind of headed forward, then the shadow that's going to cast is going to be something like this. This falls off here. I had perspective. A friend of, actually an art director of mine, Thomas Denmark, he taught me pretty much a lot of what I know about perspective and how to cast shadows properly on the ground plane. I'm really dumb about those things. There's so many scientific methods on how to properly do it. I go by complete instinct.
So in general you tend to try to do things by eye as opposed to being very technical about your approach.
Yeah, I mean, there's a couple, like, there's always things that you have to remember. Like, for example, if you're doing, a character, you want to know where the scapula kind of is. You kind of want to know where, your skeleton structure and your muscles. And I kind of know it just by memory, not by name, because I really suck at that. But for the most part, I think I'm one of those artists that relies mostly on like observational practice. We used to do a lot of, still lives and life drawing when I was a student. I don't do it nearly as much, but I still occasionally try to sketch from life as much as I can. Here, I'm going to erase that. I really need to erase that. That's bugging me. It's an awesome statue. It's a A+ statue. But yeah, I usually try to suggest to anybody who's interested in doing this kind of thing, how to improve, how to get better, to really kind of understand what is the easiest method for them to learn. Some people are excellent people, are excellent doing the more technical things, and they're a wealth of information on colors, on light, on value, value scales and colors and hues and all those amazing little technical details. Other people are a little bit more feely, more instinctive. I definitely fall onto that camp. Yeah, I do it mostly by memory, mostly by studying, mostly by doing studies. Like, for example, one of the biggest studies that I did that really helped me when I was a younger student was doing an oil study of a Van Dyck painting, a portrait. So, oh, that's not it. So here's the study that I did in oils, and this is the original. The color's a little bit different just because, photographs and stuff like that. But it helped me out a lot, and it helped me, encounter many new ways of, approaching something. And then I applied it immediately to my work, and I kept applying it, and then it kind of just became, second nature. I also use a lot of reference on my work, as starting points. I try to not to copy reference exactly as is, because I know that I'll lose a lot of information that way, because certain things aren't applicable to a painting. So what you want to try to do with reference in general is kind of get the idea of the reference, not necessarily, copy it exactly. But that comes with practice, doing a face, a bajillion times, you kind of start getting a knack for it. But yeah, does that answer your question? Hello? Hello? Uh-oh.
I apologize, my microphone was muted for just a moment, but that does answer the question very clearly. And I can actually see from your study here how your work has progressed from that point. One thing that I've always been impressed with your pieces are the very arresting faces that you paint. You manage to create faces that have an excellent form to them without feeling like each of the little features on them are being outlined or put in there. And I think that it's your understanding of lighting and understanding of form that has allowed you to do that.
I mean, it's also, again, it's also study. I used to study a lot of Sargent. I used to study a lot of Sorn. For example, this is a drawing I did of Sargent, again, a long time ago. I think this was like maybe, God, this is like maybe 6 years ago. All this and this was about like 7 to 6 years ago. But yeah, something I learned is that when you, like little things, right? Like when you're rendering an eye, they don't paint the whole eye.
Mm-hmm.
They literally just kind of focus on the corners of the eye. And whereas most people, when they think of an eye, they draw a symbol of what an eye is. You see that really kind of everywhere. That's kind of a symbol. That's not what it actually looks like.
Mm-hmm.
So if you draw the corners of an eye, and then kind of everything else becomes form, then your brain kind of starts filling in the gaps. It's completely unnecessary to do anything else.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, yes, when we render certain things, I'll definitely go in there and get a little bit more rendery, of course. But there's a certain looseness to things that always kind of works better, because that's how the eye truly sees. You don't see in high res, you don't see in details, For example, once you hit your peripherals, that's it. Everything gets kind of blurry, things kind of start warping.
Mm-hmm.
And that's something you have to take into account when you paint things. For example, here, let me bring up one of my more, one of my better known illustrations, Tesa. People ask me, it's actually really loose in certain areas, but really rendered in others. That's because when I'm painting, I'm focusing on the, and actually let me bring this up on Photoshop, that way we can zoom in. If you'll excuse me really quick. I'm, like, for example, my focal point in this painting is right here, this area alone, and nothing else matters. So everything else can remain loose. if you notice, like there's a lot of stuff in here that's kind of just quick, easy, brushstrokey. And mind you, I did labor over all of this. This took me a better part of like half a day to just kind of get all the things and all the details. But certain areas like down here, this edge is super loose. I'm not going in there and super rendering things, because when you think of the image as a whole, the last part you'll care about is, you know, this bottom part of the, this bottom part of the image. All you'll really care about, again, is her face, her expression, and other things as well. so yeah, something that we have to keep it's something that we have to keep in mind, because, you know, when you're painting something, you must constantly be asking yourself, what is the focal point? What is the purpose of this image? You know, is it about books and, you know, all these areas over here, or is it about the person? And once you establish that that's what the painting is about, then kind of realizing where your focal point and where all your rendering skills should go into becomes a little easier.
Mm-hmm. Let's talk a little bit about color, particularly in this image. You've done a great job of avoiding the trap of falling into painting the local color of a certain section. You've got a lot of great bounce light. You've got a lot of great skin tones in the faces, particularly the eye area. One mistake that you see a lot of students doing is painting the eyes this bright, glowing white color. What are some of your approaches when you are picking out and you're adjusting the colors for your image?
So I do a lot of studies early on, and my thumbnails are actually really, you know, more final, where I try to establish what my colors are early on. I look at a lot of film to inspire me with my color decisions, because I feel like film has so many fantastic colors to offer. There's a fantastic blog called Evan Richards. He's a cinematographer, and he takes a look at like Oscar-winning cinematography or nominated, and you'll start seeing so many wonderful things that they do with color. For example, they use a lot of repetition. That's a thumbnail here. Let's go. For example, this image, this one is in the thumbnail, this one's the final. But they use a lot of repetition in their color to create color harmony. Like, for example, there's a reason why when you see a film, everybody's wearing, you know, white if it's kind of like a high-key type of like a moment, and they're like in the middle of the city, and it's bright, and it helps harmonize the picture that you're seeing. In this case in particular, I'm using a lot of like similar colors throughout the image. The color of the frame is very similar to the color of the faces in the side. The red of here of the rose petals I'm using a lot over here. You know, it seems a lot more different just because it's over here and this one's up against white, but it helps harmonize. And I do this really early on, but I'm not just thinking about color, I'm also thinking about value and lighting, if that makes sense. Once you study this for so long, you realize that what really matters isn't really the colors that you have, but if you'll give me a moment, I'm going to do something here really quick. We're going to custom over here, working dot grain, and we're going to save it. We're going to call this value. This is, by the way, a really quick, easy way to kind of establish you know, a value pass. A lot of people do the Control Y and it goes to CMYK. You can set up your thing so that when you hit Control Y, it goes to value. So see, the values work in this image just because I spent a lot of time making sure that, you know, the lighting was right, the value was correct, that, you know, because there is light coming through here, that we see a bounce light kind of gradually going over here. And then later on, you kind of just add the color. I had some great reference from some very old films, you know, to kind of inspire me. And I used those as color keys. So if that makes sense.
Now, you were just mentioning bounce light, and obviously that is one of the most complex type of lighting that can be in a scene because it becomes that everything in the scene is a light source. What kind of ways do you think about that as you're approaching the image so that you can get that accurate feel for your bounce lighting?
There's a couple of rules to bounce light, and I'm going to go back to one of my casts because this was where I learned bounce light in a way where I hadn't before. So with bounce light, you have to think about, first of all, where's your light source in this image? My light source was somewhere like around here. This was my light source. Yeah, which meant everything fell down in kind of like a ray. Oops, excuse me. If you guys will excuse me for a moment, I'm going to set up the line tool. And make sure I'm a little laggy too. Oh man. Something that I used to do in some of my earlier digital work illustrations, just kind of like literally grab the line tool, duplicate it, merge it, duplicate it again. And the same way you would have a grid for perspective, I used to have a grid for lighting. And sometimes when something's really complicated and I have a lot of different light sources, I do that. Let's lower that. So that's kind of my light in general, right? So it all, if it's from the sun, it's usually parallel. If it's from a singular light source, like an indoor light bulb or something like that, then it becomes a little bit more tapered. Okay. Oh, hello? Oh, there we go. Whoa, 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 whoa. Photoshop does not like it when I transform something. Sorry, guys. But anyway, so I see that my light is going over here. So then that means that surfaces that light hits will go up. Literally bounce light. And it also depends on like what it is. You know, shinier surfaces are more reflective. Like if this was a mirror, a flat, even mirror, it would give me a flat, even bounce. If it was a curved mirror, it would give me a curved bounce of light, so light would kind of scatter everywhere. Because my surface is stone, and there's like, if you were to zoom in, like the texture of the surface is kind of like that, rather than something flat like a mirror, then that means that the light is going to jump around all over the place, right? So it's going to go here because it catches all that texture, all that, like, you know, those little holes in the stone. So it's going to go all over the place. So it's safe to assume that we have something that would look more like an even, soft, you know, type of bounce, you know, rather than like a, you know, a directional anything. And it would also be kind of subtle, you know, so more like that. It's something that you can work around really well when, for example, right here in this area, this one was great because it was like the strongest area, you know, the strongest part, the warmest part in my cast. It was where the light was concentrated. It was closest to the light source, and it was white, so it was also very reflective in its nature. But it's also stone, so it's going to give me a slightly kind of hazy, you know, bounce light. And you can play around with that, and as I did over here with like a soft, you know, kind of glow that happens. And you can go crazy with that too. You can like soften the edge a little bit. You can make it really dramatic. That helps really well. The other one that's really interesting is bounce light within shadow, right? Let's bring the grid back up. Bounce light within the shadow is very interesting because there is one key rule to bounce light in shadow. The bounce light in shadow can never be any lighter than any of the lights within the light, even the shadow areas of the light. It can never be that. Otherwise, it loses that sense that it is in shadow. So for example, right here, you'll notice it's very subtle. Here, let's go somewhere that we know. So let's grab the darkest part right here in my cast. This is where the fallout of the light goes. Well, let's kind of double check it over here. It's super light in comparison to all the bounce light that's going on in here, or even in here. And this is me grabbing from the darkest area of my cast, of the light side, into, you know, a slightly lighter part of my bounce light within the shadow. So that's something you kind of have to keep in mind when it comes to bounce light. That is the one rule that you shouldn't break, because it ruins, you know, the effect of, you know, reality. It ruins that feeling of that it's being actually lit. So again, remember, your bounce light within the shadow can never be lighter than any part, you know, any part of your light. Yeah.
Now, when you have a scene that's as complex as the illustration that you were just showing us, you also are adding in color that's being bounced. You're also adding in multiple objects. How do you keep all that information in your brain without it becoming overwhelming?
So, there are times that it does become overwhelming. Like, I think that's something that just happens. We can't stop it. But what I try to do is I try to separate each aspect or each moment of my painting into different sections. Like, let's go back on this painting, and if you'll excuse me, I'm going to take a moment. I'm going to go to my website, my blog really quick.
Sure.
Just because I have an area that does showcase my process in here. And it's a little tutorial. So, blah, 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 blah. So I'm not sure if this will show it exactly as I'm working on it. Here, let's go back. Let's go to another image, and just give me a second.
Sure.
Here, let's go to thumbnail. This is a thumbnail that I did for Magic the Gathering. It wasn't approved, but it showcases what I usually do and how I establish all that stuff pretty early on. So I start with kind of like, I don't know if you guys can see it, but that's a quick line work on how I do it, some basic texture that I pulled in. Let's see if I can find it. No, that's not it. Yeah, I'll just bring it all up. So what I usually try to do is right here. I try to establish it early on. What my general with big brush, basic brush strokes, what my general colors will be, what my general light situation will be, because I don't want to overwhelm myself later on. I think the trick is to try and simplify things. See, when it's at this stage, it's so simple to just kind of change things around. Like, I start with kind of like a really basic, let's focus on this guy over here. Where's my friend? Oh no, this guy's much better to show. Woohoo! All right, so let's focus on this guy right here in the front. So that's how I start, just basic line doodle, simple, pass. Then what I do is I make a new layer, and I usually hit, control. What's the thing that you make a new layer? And once you make a new layer, you can hit OK. And okay, let's do it again because everything was. There's this thing is to use previous layer to create clipping mask. So I use clipping mask a lot in my work to kind of help ease that whole, values and lighting and things like that. So you just hit OK, and it creates this little thingy, this right here, where it has an arrow towards the original. And what a clipping mask does is that, now you can paint anything on top of all the information that's below without going outside the transparency. You can play around with it. You can do all kinds of layers of layer effects, like I'm going to do an overlay on it, or maybe a multiply. You can also erase from out of it. You can also put a mask on that clipping mask, which is really useful because it's you know, you can kind of help and cut out some shapes. But anyway, kind of going back on track, this guy in particular, I used the clipping mask and I started kind of like bringing in the shadows, you know, really adjusting things all over the place, painting on top of that. And because at this stage it's so simple, it's so big, it's brushstrokey, I'm not focused on rendering, I can think more clearly about what the lighting is, how does the bounce light work. Like for example, at this point I realize he's a little too dark, he needs to have a light source, something to kind of, you know, have him jump out. So right at this point I added like a basic light kind of like from the back. Imagine like maybe there's a torch or maybe there's bounce light or something, and then that way this area right here can stand out. And then I added more layer effects. So see how it kind of jumps from, you know, really basic you know, doodle and really basic, really basic you know, gesture, and then I build up from that and get more elaborate little on. And I try to take it step by step because I know that if I were to focus on, oh, I need to focus on the bounce lights of the whole thing, or there's multiple light sources going on, no, you're going to go crazy. So I try to take it one step at a time. And usually when I'm working with a really complex image that has many light sources, I try to think of one light source at a time. You know, like, oh, well, let's say, dear Photoshop, don't shut on me. Let's say I'm going to add a light source over here. And it's, you know, kind of, you know, let's make it a little tinier. That tiny. It's a little orb. Maybe let's make our little floating orb go over here. And I'm like, okay, so that's a light source that I have to worry about. And I already finished a big one, which is over here all the way. Let's say that I have a big old spotlight. So once I already have all this stuff established, then I can think about, oh, that little orb, it's only going to glow maybe around this much, you know, about that far. And now that I have already my main light source set, I start thinking about this light source. And I kind of just add it. You know, if at any point I have questions on what the light actually looks like, I'll stop the whole process and I'll get the necessary reference, you know, to be able to accurately depict it, you know, because reference will be, you know, if I'm a scientist, you know, reference is when I go out to the field and I observe, or I do experiments and I'm observing, you know, and that's how I get, you know, my theories, and that's how I can properly really write all those things. You know, it would be impossible without that information. So I want to make it as easy to myself as possible, you know. See, and that's just that little orb. Now, like if I were to bring that little orb closer, hey little orb, where are you at? Oh, you're over here. So if I were to bring that little orb just even closer, then the lighting would get a lot stronger on him, because it's my second light source. And I would be so bold that I, you know, paint it over here, and the light would kind of fall over here, and maybe even over here, and then maybe over here, maybe the top of his ear would catch a bit more light, and maybe over here as well. You start thinking about, you know, things in 3D, and again, like, you know, you can always grab your friend, or, you know, you need an eraser shaped in this, you know, in the shape of a human, and really take a look at what's going on. It helps a lot. It helps a lot. And you know, I'm doing this right now just from memory, but again, I've done this so many times that like I can do it, you know, some of it from memory, but I still have my doubts, and if I ever have my doubts, I always go out and I get the reference I need. But I would do all the lighting and all the basic lighting and all of that early on, because in that way it's as simple as just a big brush stroke. Not only that, but it also makes it visually exciting. It gives it, you know, movement. And if I were to take this to a final render, I would actually leave a lot of stuff, you know, as is. Like I wouldn't change much of this area over here. I'd probably just render little areas like maybe the neck and over here, because that would be closer to our peripherals, to our line of sight. This would be kind of hazy because, again, it's in our peripherals, so we don't really need it. And it's also not what the story is about. The story is about this moment. So I would render the living hell out of this section. Then maybe consider what's the secondary areas of rendering over here, maybe. Maybe the third ones would be this one and this one. So it would be like 1, 2, 3, 3. And then everything else would be a 4. Meaning I wouldn't really care, oh, maybe actually 3, 2. Hands are important. So actually I would spend a lot of time on hands. But the difference of rendering is what I would focus. Like this would be like 100% rendered, whereas this part would be like maybe 70% rendered, where I do leave a couple brush strokes kind of loose. And maybe this one would be like 50% to maybe 40% rendered, which would be kind of loose and sketchy, and everything else maybe 20%, to which, the only thing that matters is that the values and the shapes are right. If the values and the shapes are right, the eye will fill in the rest. And because I already worked with my lighting early on, I don't have to worry so much about, figuring out later on, oh, where's my, bounce light coming from? Where's this coming from? Because I tackled on it early on. Woohoo!
Now, in those areas where you keep that loose brush strokey feel, pardon me, say that one 3 times fast. In the parts where you keep that loose brush strokey feel, is that a combination of the way that you approach your brush strokes? Is it also the type of custom brushes that you use? What do you do to achieve that look?
So I come from a heavy, traditional background. I used to paint a lot in oils and acrylics and things like that. So one of the things, when I started working in digital, everything felt really kind of, too digitally for me. Mm-hmm. So I started really focusing on how can I make it, not feel digital. It's a mixture of, settings. It's a mixture, the brush work is a mixture of, one, getting the right brushes. I've been lucky enough to, have wonderful friends who've given me brushes from, for example, this brush right here is given to me by Mitch Morehouser, who's also an incredible artist. And it gets such a nice, build-up-y. We modified it into something more triangular because it has such great shape. It's fantastic for shading. I also have other brushes from Matthias Verhulst, Jamie Jones. Min Yum has excellent brushes. This one also is given, I think this one's Jamie's. But yeah, like you can find a wealth of brushes that will just, give you that right feel. And it's also knowing, these are all my brushes. I do need to clean it out because it's disgustingly huge. This one's from Jamie. Oh no, wait, this one. And this one's fantastic too. Like it does give you a really nice line. Another thing that you do need to kind of understand is the program as well. So let's say I'm trying to, make a brush, a loose brush kind of painting, but I don't know, what my settings are, or I don't know, like, how to get that. That's where flow and opacity come in. So if you were to think about it in terms of oil painting, right? Think of opacity, how much paint you put into the brush, and the mediums. And no, sorry, it's the opposite. Opacity is your medium. How much medium are you doing? Is the painting straight from the tube at 100%? Or is the painting a little bit diluted with some glaze? Or, yeah, like are you glazing? That's pretty much what opacity does. Now, flow is that's how much, paint you put in the brush. At 100% flow, I have a loaded brush. I grabbed that GABA paint and I just dipped it and it's heavy and it's just crazy. At like lower opacities, then my brush is a lot drier. So I can actually showcase the texture of my brush a lot better. See the difference between that?
Mm-hmm.
Here's again 100% heavy, just loaded with paint. And at maybe 33%, it's a lot drier. It showcases the texture. And that works really well with some of those textural brushes that you find around there. Things that'll, feel like a brush. Like for example here, maybe not that one. Maybe more like looking around. See, that's why you should clean your brushes always. See? And that's how I get that very brushworky type of look. Not only that, but again, as I said earlier, once you study lots of Sorn, lots of Sargent, those old guys, those old masters, you'll start to realize that they actually, again, always kind of render things quite loosely. They always focus on their focal point, but everything else, it's all about getting it right the first time, and keeping that big brush mark, loose and nice, and the right value, the right shape, and you'll be golden.
Now, you've done a lot of concept work, you've done a lot of illustration, of course you've done fine art work as well.
Uh-huh.
Do you find that you use very similar approaches to each one of those, or do you adjust it a little bit depending on what the artwork is for?
I actually approach all of them in a very similar way. In fact, some of my digital techniques have flown into my traditional work, because I'm always trying to figure out, how can I work in bigger, and how can I give this a big blaze? Like, for example, this image, it was all just, how can I pull and push? So I gave it a big, I had graphite powder, and I had a napkin, a tissue, a soft tissue, and I kind of just went in and really started scrubbing all over, and I'm thinking, and I actually adjusted the shape of the napkin to kind of look more like a square brush from digital, and I would just go in there and really get in and dip the tissue on the graphite powder and go in, and then with my kneaded eraser, I kind of start picking certain areas away. I have certain erasers that are different sizes. If you don't have, there's a place I think, I'm trying to remember the exact, but there's various erasers that there's a 0.3 eraser that's fantastic. If you don't have access to those, just get a white regular eraser that you'd use and then cut it up into pieces with your, X-Acto knife. But then I just start picking up things. I also have I also start all my compositions digitally. I figure out my sketches digitally. Then I grab all my references and my pictures together and make a digital comp of what it looks like. And then from there on, I go on ahead and I just, once that's all set up, all I have to do is just render it and draw it. And it's almost like I'm working from life because I have everything already set up. And in certain areas, obviously, for my, painterly work, or for my traditional work, for my digital work, I usually think, oh, well, then how can I get it to feel real? How can I get it to feel like, that is a true brush stroke, or that is, or this area is kind of nice and loose, or this area has I try to imagine, oh, well, if this was in oils, how would I, go about, how to make that mark? Would I, tilt the brush to the side? Would I taper the end? Would I lift this part out? Which area would have the most, paint? Which area would have impasto? And I would want it to be here, and I, play around with, certain layer effects and, filters to kind of get that, feeling to it. So yeah, it definitely crosses over. I always recommend students to just paint in all kinds of mediums in any way. If you're an oil painter and you don't like digital, learn digital. You'll be amazed what comes into your work. If you're a digital painter and you don't like traditionals, paint paint traditionally. There's something amazing about the things that you do in order to achieve good results. Not only that, it's to not have undo is kind of a mind trip. It's a definite. It'll give you it'll give you a workout. You'll just be like, okay, I can't mess this up, and that's also something really special too. Like for example, here is an oil painting I did recently for my latest gallery show, and it was really tricky because it had been a while since I last painted in oils, and I'd been painting like about a year in digital, and I had forgotten how final certain brush marks are. There's no time for noodling. There's no time for figuring out, how to fix it. You just had to fix it. You just had to go at it from one go. And that, I think, made me a much better artist today, just because I had that, mind training. I had that, workout. So yeah, very helpful.
So there are many people here that are either in the industry or intending to be in the industry soon or are on their way to becoming a great artist. What kind of advice could you give to that person as they are kind of approaching what is going to be hopefully the rest of their lives?
Okay.
The big question.
Okay, let me think. Let me think for 1 second. All right. I think I would give a person 3 things, 3 pieces of advice. Number 1, love it. God, dear God, you're going to be spending, the real professionals, and even the real, not even the real professionals, people that are obsessed with this and that, become, industry professionals, become industry standards. They're working a lot. You're going to be pulling some crazy hours. Me personally, I work, my schedule, my weekly schedule is as follows. 9, I'm already at 9 a.m. at ILM. I usually leave between 7 to 8. I come home, I have about maybe 1 hour to eat, and then, and then it's continuing to work up until like 1 or 2 a.m., to which I go to bed and I do it all over again. And my weekends aren't that different. I mean, you do have to have a life occasionally, but when I'm really busy, that's how it goes. And I'm not the only one. There's all kinds of people that just do it all the time, so you have to love it. Number 2, be an artist first. Love your craft. Love to study. Love to learn. Don't think of yourself as, oh, I only want to be a concept artist, so I'll only do concepts, and that's all I ever do, because you're limiting yourself to, oh, what does fine art have to offer? What does, still life have to offer you? What does life drawing have to offer? Just because it's not a dragon or just because it doesn't have like sci-fi guns doesn't mean it's not valuable to you. So just, be a craftsman, have pride in what you do. Don't just, pigeonhole yourself into just being one thing. That's one of the great things about, at least for me, one of the great things about working at ILM and working at the jobs that I've had. I've always been able to do many different things, from detectives to dragons to, sci-fi. It's been really fun. And you learn a great deal from all those things. And the last absolute one is be a good person. Be a good person. This industry is made by fantastic people who will help each other out in a bind, will help students. A-holes are known, and you don't want to do that. You don't want to burn any bridges. You don't want to be mean to anybody, because you never know, if that person will be there in the future and you'll need their help. Or maybe you were mean to them because you thought they glared at you or something, and that person had something invaluable to teach you. So yeah, those are the 3 things I would tell a person. Love what you do, love it, because you're going to be doing it a lot. Be a craftsman, be an artist, do all kinds of things, draw all the time, study, learn, observe, paint traditionally, digitally, and don't be an a-hole. Pretty much. Yeah, that's what I would suggest.
Now, obviously, being an artist is it's a very difficult thing to do, and you run into a lot of roadblocks, a lot of frustrations, and a lot of difficulties. What would you say to a person who is currently running into one of those roadblocks and is currently experiencing those frustrations? What do you recommend that they do so that they can pull themselves through that?
Okay. First, take a breath. Take a deep breath. Stop what you're doing. If you're frustrated at your painting, just stop it. Just go take 5 minutes, walk, pet your cat or your husband or your wife or whatever it is that you have to do. Calm the hell down. And then realize that it's going to be okay, because painting, it's all about problem solving. If you can fix that problem, if you can find the piece to that puzzle, you'll get it. And perhaps that, that means, oh, I'm not well versed in this. Let me take an hour and do a quick study of whatever it is that I'm doing to, get my mind going and learn. Or maybe it is, that you just need 5 minutes or a day, if you have it, to just kind of step back. Maybe you need a second pair of eyes to kind of give you some direction. But frustration never leads to anything good. Frustration will make you a sloppy painter. You'll get frustrated, you'll start noodling, and noodling is death. You'll like noodle and you'll over render, or you won't think of all the things that you need to be thinking of, so you'll make even more mistakes, and then you end up with something that's just a muddy mess. And then the other thing I would tell a person that's really frustrated or hit a roadblock, we as artists have a tendency to think, oh, I'm the only one that has ever hit this roadblock. Look at this person. They never hit roadblocks. Look, they're just constantly making amazing artwork. And that's not true. We're all frustrated all the time. we're all unhappy. That was one of the biggest revelations that I had, going from student to working professional, is that everyone that I admired at some point felt like their art was crappy and awful. And it was just like, oh my God, we're all sad people. So just if you're feeling sadness, know that your heroes, the people that you love or you think that, oh, their artwork's so amazing, they probably are feeling that sadness right now. Oh, or if not right now, tomorrow, or if not the next day. It's to be an artist, it's kind of a wave. You have your incredible ups, you have your downs, but you just have to remain calm through all of that. So that's what I would tell them.
If you had one piece that you've done that you really hope that you're remembered for, one experience that you've had as an artist that you wish you could hold on to, what would that experience or that piece be?
Oh, shit. I don't know. I honestly, I'd rather be remembered for what I've done for my whole body of work, and for the things I can contribute to the industry and the community, rather than any particular painting. Because I think I'd be really depressed if I'd be remembered by one painting. I've already felt it a little bit. For example, my Tesa painting has so far been one of my more successful paintings. And it's funny because it came with a lot of strife and a lot of like sadness. See, there's that sadness again. Yeah, that everybody always kind of goes back to that. And at some point, it's fun the first 6 months, but then afterwards, you're just like, wait, does that mean everything I'll ever make will stand up to that? And it's kind of depressing. I do know that if you're an artist, you're lucky to make. You're always kind of, like Brahms said it best, you're always kind of, seeking that perfect painting, and it'll never come. But that's why we're artists. We're always kind of seeking that perfect painting. So whenever someone tells me, oh, that's your best painting, I don't think you can top that, or oh, I remember you just only for this, or oh, you'll be remembered by this painting, I get kind of sad, because then that means that, search for perfection, it's over, because there it is, you found it. So everything that you do from that point forward kind of sucks. So I don't know. I don't think I could say that there's any one painting that I would love to be remembered for. I would rather be remembered for my actions and for the person that I am and the body of work than just one thing, if that helps.
Well, Carla, I really do want to thank you for joining us today. I can say that I myself have enjoyed speaking with you today, and I'm sure that the attendees here have enjoyed it as well. I would
Yay.
like to say before we go, just a reminder that registration for CGMA courses is currently closed, but it will open again April 4th. Please visit 2d.cgmasteracademy.com and sign up for the class or classes that best fit your needs. Again, Interview with the Masters is an ongoing series. Keep an eye on our website for more information. And we were talking with Karla Ortiz today, concept artist at ILM. And just
Holy
a big
crap,
thank
it's
you to
over.
you, Karla.
Holy crap, it's over. I'm just like, wait, really, that's it? Holy crap. Yes, it was an
really
incredible pleasure. Yeah, it was an incredible pleasure to be here with you guys and with all of you listeners out there. And yay! Have a drink today. It's Saturday. Have some fun. Party hard. Or paint more. Paint. Just paint. Yeah. Bye, guys. It was great.
Thanks so much, Karla, and thank everyone for joining us today.
Thank you. Bye.